Miso poached salmon with Asian vegetables.
Organisation is key in the kitchen. Take a couple of minutes before you start and set yourself up. Make sure you know where everything is, stock, spatula, pan, etc. It becomes less stressful, but more importantly, the end results are incredible. First off, get your pan on. Whisk and stock. Start off with this amazing fermented soybean puree. Into the pan, 3 nice tablespoons. Gas on. Now get your fish stock and whisk into the puree. Be generous with the stock. You want this nice, light broth, basically.
You can buy miso paste from big supermarkets and it works brilliantly with salmon.
Poaching the salmon in the miso stock gives it a really nice sort of sweet, earthy, creamy flavour. It's incredible. Bring it up to the boil. I'm going to infuse the broth and make it a little bit more fragrant. Kaffir lime leaf is very lemony inside the miso broth.
Then chop chilli.
Chili's in.
And finely sliced ginger.
That's simmering beautifully. Now, we're going to poach the salmon. Poaching means cooking it in liquid, but it's cooked gently. And the secret here is to keep that salmon skin on. If we took the skin off now, the salmon can actually break up whilst it's poaching. Skin side, down. Just going to slide that in. Under. Nice. The minute that stock starts boiling, turn it down and let it simmer. Take a little ladle and just every couple of minutes pour over. That makes sure the top of the salmon is cooked evenly and keeps it nice and moist. And poaching is one of the most delicate ways of cooking, so you have to handle it with care. Whilst the salmon's poaching in the miso broth, start preparing your vegetables.
I'm using tender stem broccoli and pak choy.
I always like to cook the leaf and the stem separately. The leaf is like sort of spinach, and the stem is so much thicker. It's almost as thick as a stick of celery. So I like to get the stems sliced, just so I've got that nice sort of crispness. Place the leaves together nicely, roll them up nice and tight, and then slice them down. Now, my salmon, already the flavour in that broth has been elevated. Now it tastes really fishy. You've got the heat, the chilli, spiciness of the ginger, and the kaffir lime leaf. Take your fish slice and place it very gently underneath the salmon and push it down. Fish slices are flexible for that reason. Bend it, lift it up, just touch, looking for a springy, firm texture. And just sit that on top. A little touch of the broth over it. It stops it from drying out. Leave that to cool down for 2 minutes. Bring the stock back up to the boil. Broccoli in, pak choy, stems in. A little taste. It's getting better and better and better. Cook the broccoli and the bok choy stems for 1 minute and then add the tops in. Turn the salmon into your hand and just peel all that skin off. And the skin also helps to keep the salmon nice and moist.
Then gently flake the salmon.
That's the secret behind poaching. Everything just stays so moist. Wonderful long shards of pink. Now, just before we serve, we're going to add our mushrooms. These are enoki mushrooms.
You can buy these enoki mushrooms in big supermarkets and good grocers.
Slice them off. I'm going to put half in, and the other half I'm going to serve with the salmon. Toasted sesame seed oil. Put a little drip in there. Just rub. And you're just lining, almost like a little coat of varnish. Start off with your mushrooms, and then my salmon. 4 nice layers. And then finally, the mushrooms.
Top with the vegetables.
And then finally, a nice ladle. That beautiful, really sumptuous, rich stock. Lovely. And that is an amazing miso poached salmon soup.
Simplify your cooking by getting organised, and amazing food will be coming out of your kitchen every day. And for great food, you need great ingredients. My recipe for meatballs is so versatile, it can be used to make a dozen amazing dishes. One of my favourites is meatballs in fragrant coconut broth.
Having a freezer of home-cooked, delicious food ready to go can be a real lifesaver. It means you never have to compromise on flavour. These meatballs are delicious, but more importantly, they freeze so well. First off, get your pan on and start sweating off your onions and your garlic. This recipe involves making the meatballs in a classic way, but the exciting part is actually cook them in coconut milk. And it gives a really nice new dimension to a sort of soft, rich, sumptuous meatball. Chop the onion nice and finely, keeping those slices very close together. The closer the slices, the finer the onion. Pat it back down at an angle, slice down, and just chop. I want the onions nice and fine because I want some finesse to these meatballs. And the secret of a really good meatball is the texture, getting that balance right between the minced beef, the breadcrumbs, the milk, and the seasoning. A couple of cloves of garlic. Slice the garlic really nice and thinly. Nice. Pan, nice and hot, and a tablespoon of olive oil. Quite generous with the olive oil. Onions and garlic in. A little touch of salt and pepper. With your mince, open it up a little bit and sort of pat it out. Salt and pepper. For me, a good meatball is all about the softness, the texture of that rich beef, and the way it sort of melts in your mouth. You can colour it on the outside, but you want it nice and soft and sort of rich in the centre. Mix that in beautifully, and then paste it back out again. I've got some really nice dried chilli flakes. I'm going to season the onions with the chilli flakes in. Cook that out for 2 minutes. I'm going to add some milk. Take your breadcrumbs, make a little well, 3 or 4 tablespoons of milk. That makes a sort of nice, slightly doughy texture, but it lightens the texture of the meatball. Place that in. Add your onions, your garlic, and your chilli in there as well. Nice. Get your hands in there and start mixing them. If you've got the right amount of milk and breadcrumbs, it doesn't need binding with an egg. Don't make them too small. The problem with making them too small is the fact that they dry out quickly. Just the size of a golf ball. A little bit bigger. Nice. Give them a really nice tight squeeze. That stops it from breaking up.
It always pays to double the recipe and spend a bit more time making extra meatballs so you can freeze a batch ready for another time.
Give the pan a little wipe out. Don't wash out that pan. We've got that flavour from the onions and the garlic at the bottom. Get that pan nice and hot. Touch of olive oil in there. Place them at the top of your pan. Nice and gently sit them in the oil. Get a palette knife and go underneath them and just sort of tilt the pan and let the pan cook the back of the meatball. We're going to add some heat. Coriander seeds, slightly spicy and peppery, just to give a really nice flavour to the coconut milk. In. Next, some cardamom seeds. 3 or 4 onto the board, knife on. In. A little touch of turmeric into the centre of the pan. That's going to give it a really nice spicy flavour. A little pinch of cinnamon. All the time you're doing this, those meatballs are just getting tastier and tastier. A couple of dried chilies, let them infuse in that oil. And then some lemongrass. Just take the back of your knife and sort of beat it down. That starts to release all that lovely sort of fragrance. It's like someone's just let off the most amazing fragrant air freshener. In with the lemongrass. And finally, some fresh ginger. Just peel and slice, nice and thinly. Time now to turn them over and let the other half for a wonderful flavour. Chicken stock in. Bring the stock up to the boil, turn the gas up, and then add the coconut milk. And I want the coconut milk just sitting underneath the top of the meatball. Coconut milk in, and that sort of gives it that creamy richness, but it's not heavy. It's a fragrant, light richness. Before we start simmering, check the seasoning. That nice, soft texture of the meatball, but that fragrant, light richness of the coconut broth. It's just gonna cook those meatballs perfectly.
Bring the broth up to the boil, then simmer gently for 8 to 10 minutes.
Touch them with your finger. They should be slightly pliable, but slightly springy. Gas off. Gonna finish it off with something light and fresh. Zest of lime. But I want the zest on top of the meatball, sort of cut through that richness. And then finally, squeeze the fresh lime. And that just gives it that nice, zesty, amazing taste. Stir in the juice. It's got that kick and that vibrant taste. Now, the exciting part. When you come to serve it, be generous with that coconut broth. Tilt the pan. Get a good couple of ladles of the broth in. Meatballs. And that is a very delicious way of eating a old-fashioned meatball and bringing it into the 21st century. And they're just as good cooked from frozen as well.